Daniel Watkins, Head of Operations and Infrastructure at the Oxford Fertility Unit. Daniel, hello.
Hi there.
So Daniel, would you mind just introducing yourself for everyone on the line?
Yeah, so obviously, my position. So I head up effectively the IT and operational functions of the business, and that covers everything from networking, software support side across a number of 13 sites, both in the UK, Middle East, and in continental Europe. The majority of our business is healthcare, specifically within the fertility industry. We're part of a larger group of clinics called the Academic Reproductive Partnership. So I sit performing the IT role across all of the clinics within the group. And they vary from clinics that deal with solely private patients to clinics that deal solely with NHS patients and any combination in between. We also offer a range of things like genetic services, pathology services. So it's a fairly mixed bag of operational requirements. And coming with that, obviously, are a number of different challenges with interfacing with NHS systems or national health systems for those of you outside the UK. And effectively lots of different regulatory requirements depending on where you're based. We're headquartered in Oxford, and due to regulatory requirements, all of our infrastructure is managed in-house. So because of fertility legislation, we're not allowed to hold fertility data outside of a registered HVA centre. Work within an ISO 9000 environment and also within 27001 for data security. And the data center environment is a fairly high specification for a company of our size, just because of the level of redundancy that is required in the infrastructure to support clinical services. We're also governed by the Human Fertility and Embryology Authority, Care Quality Commission, and because we are a NHS national business partner, we also directly interface with the NHS N3 network and a number of other private commercial sort of peering organisations for different healthcare providers.
Great. How many people are in the IT team over at the Oxford Fertility Unit?
So we run with a team of 4, a couple of first-line support, so sort of second, third-line support, and then myself. And we're about to bring in a full-time IT manager as we are rapidly expanding.
Gotcha. So would you mind telling us a bit about your previous network and then sorts of challenges that was posing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had a predominantly Cisco-based equipment, and effectively it was about 5 years old, reaching towards the end of its lifespan, and we were really looking for something that would enable us to reduce the support burden or the level of sort of qualification that staff would need to be able to operate the infrastructure in a sort of a very manageable way. We didn't have any centralized wireless control, so it was individually configured wireless access points in different places. And there were tools out there for configuration of sort of Cisco switching stuff, but most of it was done via command line. So, and obviously with all of that, we weren't in a position really to offer any kind of quality of service management in terms of traffic visibility. So it was time for an upgrade and a replacement of everything, and also to allow us to continue on our sort of acquisition spree where we're picking up businesses at 1 a quarter, and that was a little bit of a challenge in the previous environment. So.
Yeah. Okay. So what sort of requirements did you then kind of put together when you were looking to upgrade your network?
So we were really looking for effectively a turnkey solution where we could just drop the bits of kit unconfigured out on each side, plug them into our wide area network, and have them sort of auto-configured, provisioned from a single point with very little interaction from the IT staff. We needed, PoE capable APs dotted everywhere, and because of most of our services moving from things like standard desktops to wireless devices, be that tablets, mobile devices generally. We were then also looking for full management of the equipment, and to give us also the ability to dive into the traffic and look what was peering, and drop that into a full multi-site environment. And then equally from my perspective from a management perspective, I was looking for ease of use, control, and reduction in kind of risk for configuration changes to the network, and also to have the auditability portion in a very manageable way that we can allow certain admin users access to certain sites for different various things, and also the ability to drop some of the small switches in Meraki's range into remote sites where we would be connecting with third-party providers as a first connection point, and give us visibility of what was going in and out on the traffic of that side, where we had direct peering.
Okay, great. So what made you choose the Cisco Meraki solution then?
Ease of use, the fact that I rang up on the first day and asked if I could trial. A day later, there were 3 switches sat on my desktop, and we've had sort of great customer service since. So it's very, very sort of easy management, difficult to generally make mistakes when configuring things, and full visibility of everything that's going through the network, from client visibility all the way up to traffic stats in terms of breaking traffic down, and in pretty much real time. So an equivalent solution would have required us to cobble various different things together, and all of this functionality is available out of the box. So certainly from my perspective and the team's perspective, has made life infinitely easier for management of the whole network.
Great. Yeah, we'll take a look at that dashboard a little bit later on. So can you describe the deployment that you actually chose, and the configuration, how different groups of people at the organization connect to the network?
Sure. So at the point of deployment, we were going through a wholesale IT upgrade. So we replaced all of our existing switch stacks with a combination of 48-port and 24-port switches, along with some 8-port switches in various small areas. And there were about 25 in the initial deployment. And then across the 4 sites that we did the initial deployment, there were 20-odd access points. The majority of the clients in a sort of administrative side are still connecting via desktop, PCs, laptops, but equally, as clinical information is required sort of in a more mobile format, the number of tablet devices and mobile devices that we're using has been a big drive for the wireless side, also providing interconnection with other mobile devices for students who we deal with as part of our hookup with Oxford University, so allowing students to roam across multiple sites as part of their educational experience has also been very, very helpful. All of these switches have been deployed in the sort of edge layer, and they connect back to a central core of other Cisco switches. So this is really a refresh of the whole edge environment.
Great.
I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of now that you have everything deployed, what kind of benefits are you seeing versus what you used to have?
It's just infinitely easier to manage. I mean, it's just from basic configuration of switches. We've run a fairly locked down environment, so giving first, second line guys access to very quickly go in, set VLANs on ports, change configuration, and then have traffic visibility, so instantly finding clients anywhere on the network. And it's really allowed us to put through changes on the network at a very quick rate, and then from a management perspective, get visibility of that. Also, deploying SSIDs across lots of access points and lots of different sites, very, very simple, and the management of those things like SSIDs in terms of provisioning visitor access with time restrictions, bandwidth controls, and able to sort of set level 7 or layer 7 traffic shaping across the traffic to make sure we're dealing with contention correctly. It's just become an infinitely easier process than having to configure an AP on a desktop first, ship it to site, get someone to stick it up, make sure it's all configured correctly, and then come back. You can just effectively send the site out, or send the site an AP, get the estates guy to mount it, and then it's done basically. So it's for time to get services deployed is infinitely quicker than it would have been otherwise. So and then ease of upgrade management. I mean, last night we pushed out the October quarter set of patching. The whole process took about 7 or 8 minutes across all devices. So it's 40 network devices, both wired and wireless, across the network, and everything went through straight away, absolutely fine. That's the 9th time we've done a full network upgrade at midnight or so, and everything went perfectly. So having to load iOS images and other sort of firmware onto switches, check you've got the right versions, all these kind of things was a bit of a hassle for the previous 4 or 5 years. We now don't really worry about it. We just run through, check the changelog of what's been pushed out. And of course, you have the benefit of any new features coming into that instantly available in the dashboard. So that's made life so easy for us. It's great. So it's really taken the hassle out of deploying most of the network edge stuff.
Perfect. So in terms of results then, what kind of results are you seeing, and is there any comments from people or senior management about the new network?
Yeah, mostly it's just around the ease of use. It's we rolled out a visitor Wi-Fi across all the groups of clinics. It took about 2 hours to configure, threw it up. People are connected instantly. There's been no problems. We've deployed a roaming or an SSID across the group of networks for clinicians to roam with. So every site they turn up with, they're not bothering about checking what the key is for the day to be able to connect, and that all ties back into Active Directory. So we get authentication, know which device is attached to which user, from mobile phones to laptops to tablets. And there's literally been no problems with it at all. So it's been a great experience in that regard. And when there have been odd blips or things that we haven't quite configured correctly or haven't quite performed correctly, then the support guys have been very, very helpful on that side. And that's quite a refreshing change from other vendors where you sort of sat in a queue or waiting for a response. It's okay to just pick up the phone, speak to someone, and invariably the problem is sorted straight away, which is great from an end user's and administrative perspective, because you don't have to worry about the fact that you may or may not get through to support first time. So that has been a great benefit to everybody across the group. So.
Yeah, it's a really great advantage of actually having a centralized management pane like this, and that you can get support instantaneously in real time.
Yeah, and the support guys, are always very helpful. A couple of occasions we've needed to find a bit of kit, or we've had a client that's acting up or not appearing correctly. We've had to ring up support. They have a quick look into what's going on, find out what the issue is, and then advise us exactly what needs to happen. So really, it's almost like outsourcing the kind of top end of second and third line support to an external provider, and that from a cost management perspective is fantastic from my side. Makes us very, very responsive to be able to deal with things, and you've always got that extra line of support whenever you need it.
Great. So finally then, do you have any plans for expansion for the Cisco Meraki, and just generally ICT plans at the organizations as you grow?
Yeah, I mean, we're very rapidly growing business at the moment. We're acquiring somewhere in the region of 1 to 2 businesses every quarter, so that's throwing an extra 60 clients on the network from each site. As part of our extension, that includes access points, switching infrastructure, and just the ability to ship the stuff to the site, plug it in, turn it on, let it auto configure. 5 minutes later, you've got a network that's up and running. It's proved as simple as that. So from a rapidly expanding business perspective, it's a no-brainer to allow us to meet the sometimes often challenging requirements of a very fast acquisition cycle. So.
Perfect. So I think that was a really good overview in terms of just on paper looking at what you guys have done, but we have the added advantage of we're able to now, let's flip over to the actual dashboard and we can see what we've been talking about. So let me just flip over to my web browser. So Daniel has kindly agreed for us to be able to share the Oxford Fertility Unit dashboard that they actually use to manage their own network. I have promised Daniel that it is a read-only dashboard, so I can't mess anything up. But Daniel, if you want to just talk through and tell me where to go, and I'll point and click.
Yeah, I suppose if you head up to the network and choose Repin UK wired, and then when it pops across, you'll instantly see a list of all the sort of standard information. So these are all the switches across the network, their connectivity status, important information, MAC address, usage, configuration status. We're very quick. These these switches, we just stick the serial number into the portal, stick the MAC address in our network server, DHCP, and the device pops up online, also configures. And then I guess if you want to just choose any of the switches on the list from something in, let's say the switch number 16, MS42P01, I guess would be that's one of the switches in our data center rack for our main HQ site. You can just drop into the switch. Takes a couple of seconds to load up. Instantly shows you the status of the switches. If you want to hit show port list, I mean, obviously you can see traffic, lots of information. You can then break down per port to see exactly what is connected. So you can see a mixture of PCs, telephones, wireless access points. You can instantly see whether it's access or trunk port, the VLAN information, quantity of traffic that's been pushed through, and the status of the port. At the top of this page, there is a link which says configure switch ports on this switch, which will take you through to the actual configuration of the ports. And instantly you can see you can get a lot of information that, if you're used to using command line stuff that you would look to the state of the interfaces, you can get a lot of that information by just adding and removing columns to the top. The little plus symbol on the top right-hand corner enables you to add, remove columns, so you can show different things for whatever you're looking at. So if you want to look at PoE status, you could turn that on, for example's sake. And then it would just automatically appear. If you actually click on the switch port itself on the any one of those switch ports, I guess is fine.
Okay.
It will then bring up all the different settings you can add, and you can see how easy it is to add voice VLAN and standard VLAN information, whether you want an access policy associated with it, the port scheduling enables you to turn the ports on and off at different points in time. On spanning tree, BGP guard, all this sort of standard things you would expect to see on a enterprise grade switch, and instantly make changes. Takes about 30 seconds to get it pushed down to the switch, and off you go. That's the kind of some of the wired side. I guess the wireless side, which would be of interest. If you just pop across to that.
Yeah. One of the things I think when we were taking a look at the switch ports that was on that one switch, it was great to see that on the ends of those ports were Cisco Meraki wireless access points, and they're so integrated in that they were displayed as hyperlinks. So if we clicked onto any one of those, it would have taken us straight over to one of the access points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on that sort of far on the left side where you see access points underneath the monitor, that will show us the list of access points dotted around the network. Again, you can add, remove columns, see uptime, and you can drill into any number of these ports. Also, you can actually see instantly where they're connected, which switch they're running through, the IP of the access point. It's all very, very manageable. And the other ones, the sort of grayed out ones, are the ones we've just pre-staged and waiting to be plugged in. So in terms of the deployment perspective, it's so easy. It's fantastic. So I guess down the left-hand side, we've also got a list of active clients that are shown on the network. So they'll show up all your wireless clients and current quantity of. So actually, the top one on there is the CEO's MacBook Air. It gives you instantly. You can see the OS, you can see the IP address information, any policy. Stuff. So I mean, Jerome, who is number 6 down, is on our IT support team. So he's got a phone we've got a whitelist policy on that enables him automatically to log on any SSID wherever he might be. You can also see the traffic stuff, and you can see on the right hand side there's more underneath the applications. Then you can break it down into where the traffic's going. So you can see the majority of the stuff's going to our front end mail server. Then you can just run through different bits and see where traffic ends up going across the whole network, and that's an amalgamation of all the SSIDs. And again, for things like setting up SSIDs, if you can head over to configure on the left-hand side, and then SSIDs. This will show the list of SIDs that are currently live. If you take something like the finance SSID this morning, I've got a few finance consultants coming in to do an audit. I literally just went in, clicked an unassigned SSID, if you go to Edit Settings, you'll be able to see on any of the SSIDs. It doesn't really matter. You can set up the type of authentication, whether it's pre-shared, WPA. You can use radius authentication. Whether you want a splash page to meet the user when they first log in, and you can then integrate any of those bits with authentication. So depending on the choices you make, you can choose to have a branded splash page. You can change everything about the splash pages, have them load from a NAC server if you're using NAC from a third party. Further down the page, there are the actual way the SSID interacts. So you can use the Meraki standard DHCP on each SSID, or in this particular case, we wanted a direct bridge into a LAN. You can also use layer 3 roaming across the board, and you can VLAN tag traffic, tell it what kind of responses you wanted to use, and then control the actual wireless, the radio side of it as well through that interface. There's a myriad of options for configuration, but they're all super easy to use, and they take about 30 seconds to push out to the AP. So anything you do is pretty much done straight away, and you can pre-configure SSIDs before you make them live, and then choose where you want them to go live, which is a great feature. So you can then attach that also to timing areas. So I guess on the top left-hand side, there will be so SSID availability is another useful one that we make use of for. And then if you choose the SSID and select ARP visitor, you'll see that it's got predefined. There is the per AP availability tells you the tags, which are one of the fantastic features that you can use to group pieces of equipment or even ports together as effectively virtual stacks. So we've got 3 sites: our Boston Place site, 92 Harley Street, and the Institute of Reproductive Sciences in Oxford. We've created a tag for each one of those, tagged the APs with those tags, and then you can apply rules that are based on those tags, and then you can apply custom schedules, and this will then control your network however you want it configured, really. So it's a fantastic interface, and it's super easy to use, and having the ability to do both the wired and the wireless portion as all part of the same network is great as well. It makes life a lot easier. I guess for things like firewall and traffic shaping might be worth a look as well.
Yeah, do you have any of those configured?
We have, yes, so ARP Viz would be a great one. We don't want file sharing, we don't want gaming, we don't want online backups, peer-to-peer, web file sharing, so you can just create a direct rule there that says dump the traffic. For those types, it's doing layer 7 inspection of the traffic in real time, so you don't have to worry about, you can block the stuff at the ingress as opposed to having to worry about it in the core with your firewall. You can just drop it at the access point. You can then also apply traffic shaping rules to the total amount of bandwidth that's available per client, and then per SSID, so you can make sure that your visitor VLAN is not hogging loads of traffic on your main internet connection, and that your staff get a preference on or get a priority rather. So that a lot of these things are just built in, and you would traditionally have to worry about this at a different point within the network, and to be able to do that at the edge where you're doing everything on the AP, it just means that it's far more efficient, because you're not having that traffic transit through your network and then back out to wherever it needs to go. It's just dumped at the edge, and we found that this worked very, very successfully. So if I look at the corresponding traffic stats on our firewall, none of this stuff makes it through. So it definitely works, and it works very well. So I have no complaints about it at all. So it makes life a lot easier than it used to be.
The monitoring summary reports at all?
We use them ever so often, yes, to sort of really look in. I mean, it's got almost to the point where we use them initially for sort of reviewing the system, but it's kind of got to the point now where the system is reliable enough that we dip in maybe once a month to do a quick review, but beyond that, the system's been so rock solid that it hasn't really needed a huge amount of oversight, which is, again, from a management perspective, my position, it's great. I know that the support guys who work for me drop in and out of it and look at various different things, but generally, it's because the system is so reliable, we've kind of not had to worry about the management information side of it too much. But you know, you can pre-create reports, and you know, and if you need to report them to a CIO or a board member or something because they want to see a bit more detail, then it's, you know, exceptionally easy to do. You just hit the email and send it off to them. It's not going to cause you any hassle from that side of it. So, just generally find that it's made very easy. One of the great other features that at the bottom of every page you'll see is a little thing that you can click. Say, if you spot something, you can always make a wish. So we've used that several times, and some of the features that we've requested have ended up appearing in different bits, which has been made life a lot easier as well. So, you know, if you think, oh, wouldn't it be great to be able to do this, this, and this on this web page, you can stick it in there, and sometimes the support guys come back to you and say, yeah, actually, that sounds like a good idea, and we'll integrate that in. So we've found everyone in the organisation has always been very, very helpful, all the way through to the product managers, meeting with them. So yeah, I have no complaints about the system.
Yeah, I mean the Make-A-Wish thing is a great feature that actually we don't mention all that much anymore, but yeah, as you mentioned, it really is a great feature in that I think a lot of pages that you visit have this kind of thing in, but it just gets lost to some inbox somewhere. Any wish that is made here is actively kind of monitored by our development team, as well as our product managers and our senior management. We really actively use that as, you know, what our customers want to see, and we use it as kind of a roadmap for new features that we're developing. So I think that's a nice overview of what we've discussed in the slide deck. Let's go back to the slide deck, and let me just wrap up by telling people about the evaluation program, and then we'll dive into some Q&A. So as a part of attending the webinar, you will be getting a free access point so you can try out cloud management and some of the things we've seen on the dashboard firsthand. But if you are interested in any additional access points or the switches or perhaps the security appliances, we would highly recommend trying them out firsthand. We've created a trial program, as Daniel was mentioning earlier on, which is very seamless. So there is no substitute for first-hand experience, so we actively encourage you to try this out for yourself. You can sign up for free trials at meraki.cisco.com/eval, and you know they can appear on your desk, as Daniel said, as quickly as tomorrow for you to try out. Complimentary technical assistance is available should you need a hand setting any of these up, and they are without any risk or commitment, so you can try them without any obligation really. If you do find the devices aren't for you, you can simply pop them back in the box. We pay for shipping both ways, and there's a prepaid label in the box that comes with the devices. So yeah, something that we'd highly recommend trying out. So let's finish up now and open the floor out to Q&A. I know Jackie's been very busy answering all of your questions as we've been going through. Let's take a look at some of the ones Jackie has been answering, as well as sharing some of the ones that have been asked as well. It's a great question here from Lee, asking how do you integrate with Active Directory? Great question, Lee. Where we were looking at the dashboard a little bit earlier on, we were on a page called Access Control, and that's exactly where you can configure Active Directory. So there's a bunch of different options there, including pre-shared key, H.1x. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let me just flip back to the browser. And if we go to Configure Access Control, so if we imagine this is the SSID we wanted to have configured for H.1x type association, we can just select WPA2 with Enterprise. And Meraki authentication is, a lot of companies are moving completely cloud-based, and they're moving away from actually having servers on site to authenticate against. So we actually have the ability, if you have a bunch of lists, usernames, that you'd want to upload onto the dashboard itself, and you can authenticate them without any server. So that's what the Meraki authentication is. Or you can choose My Radius Server, which is a radius server you'd have on site. And because I have that selected, a little option down here becomes available, add a radius server. You can add your radius server's details, host, port, secret, and it will communicate back to your radius server every time and the client is requesting association. Yep, great question. Question here for you, Daniel, asking how many clients have you seen associated to an access point at any one time, and is this something that you tested before you went ahead and deployed?
So I think the largest number we had was about 60 on a single MR24 AP. It wasn't something we had in our initial testing phase. We had deployed a couple of APs and just opened this up to staff to use for their own mobile devices, generally because they had a lot of rubbish on them, and it will give you a fair indication as to what, say, you know, an open Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi service would lead to. We found no problems with it, and we've just kind of pushed it on. So even with 24, 25 odd wireless access points across 4 or 5 sites at the moment, you know, averaging a couple of hundred people at any one time using the system, we've had no problems at all with it.
Okay, perfect. I mean, from Meraki's point of view, we've done testing in our own conditions, and we found that access points are typically able to manage 100 plus clients simultaneously connected. But one thing we always recommend is trying this same test out in your own environment. So taking advantage of the free trial program, taking some access points out on a trial, putting them in your own environment and see how many clients you can throw onto them. I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised. But conditions vary, so you'll get a different result if you do this in a very built up, busy high street with lots of other SSIDs flying around compared to if you do it in a very rural environment with few other SSIDs. Yeah, great question. Question here for you again, Daniel, asking, did you do any kind of site surveys? How do you decide the positioning of your access points?
We're in quite a rare position in that once well, I suppose it's not a super rare condition, but effectively, because you can put the APs into a mode that's known as air marshal, you can very quickly do a site survey of channel congestion, a number of other access points. So I'll take our 92 Harley Street property as an example. We stuck an AP down there in air marshal mode. It very quickly gave us an idea of what the sort of how full the radio spectrum was. Then looked at the range available. It's a grade 3 grade 2 listed building, really thick walls, and we just ran a couple of trials. Physically, just stuck a couple of APs down there, and actually 2 for a building of that size has proved absolutely ample. So. From that perspective, if you can always mark APs as being row. You can look at the different channel selection. It's got a automatic band steering, so you can make sure that you've got not using frequencies that are congested, and that's all. And you can then look at the heat map for the number of clients and number of sort of passers-by trying to authenticate to look at the traffic quantities and how much activity the APs are trying to see. So it's all fairly straightforward. In that respect.
Yeah, that's quite a unique case actually. I've not heard of that the access points being used in that way, but yeah, of course they can be as an alternative to a full site survey. Yeah, great use case. Got a question here from Tim for us asking, are there any plans for the Cisco Meraki dashboard to integrate to allow management of traditional Cisco switches? Great question, Tim. At the moment, there aren't any plans, and as you've rightly mentioned, you can't manage traditional Cisco switches using the Cisco Meraki dashboard. And there's a simple reason for this right now in terms of to be able to manage Cisco Meraki equipment on dashboard. They've been designed really from the ground up to be able to handle the rigors of cloud management. So we have extra memory and CPU crammed into all of our hardware to be able to manage them in this way, and that's there for a redundancy feature as well. So I mentioned earlier on that if you were unlucky enough to lose connection to the cloud, your local area net would work, and it actually work exactly how you had it last configured to do so. As whenever you're making a configuration setting change, this gets filtered down and held locally on the device itself. So if you ever did lose connection to the cloud, your local area network's still working, and it's still working exactly how you had it last configured to do so. So yeah, good question. Hope that answered it. Question here from Joseph asking about the license and what happens when that expires? So great question. We make every effort to let you know that an expiration date is upcoming, and these emails and calls get more frequent as the date approaches. But if you did choose not to renew your license, the network would freeze. You do need a valid license to operate Cisco Meraki devices. Yeah, good question. Good question here, asking, do Cisco Meraki access points support mesh? Yes, absolutely. Great question. In fact, this is one of the technologies that we first developed when we were started out as a research project. So if you recall, I mentioned the company actually came about as a part of a research project centered around mesh networking algorithms. So yeah, by default, all access points automatically mesh with one another. In fact, if you have, let's say, all of your access points set up in gateway mode, connected directly to the internet, and one of these happens to fail, or the gateway connection fails, it'll automatically flip over into a repeater mode, mesh with its nearest access point, and still be able to serve clients. So yeah, great question. Question here from Ken asking, is there a way to associate or issue clients temporary 24-hour, for example, tokens for guest access? Great question. And this is possible in one way that we have on the dashboard. We call this guest ambassador. So essentially, you can create or generate a key for association, and you can actually give even a limited view of the dashboard to what we call guest ambassador. So it could be someone who sits at the reception desk, gets a very limited view of the dashboard, enabling them to enter email address, name of users you would wish to give access for a limited time to. They can enter those details, decide how long that key is valid for, generate it, give it to them, and they have access for whatever time they've predefined. Yep, great question. Question from Joseph again. Daniel, it's one for you as well, actually, asking, do you use any of the network access control features?
Yes, we use AD authentication for the majority of our staff and student SIDs. So, and that seems to work absolutely fine. We've had no problems with it. It's just a case of sticking the IP of your AD server, turning on the relevant policy, and then the users are presented with authentication. We don't really use it on the wired side, but the wireless side, we make extensive use of it.
Perfect, great. Great question here from Damien asking about features or monitoring access for senior management staff, i.e. non-technical. Great question, Damien. And in fact, the version of the dashboard that I used for demonstration purposes today was actually a read-only version. So you can have role-based administration configured. So say, for example, you wanted to give non-technical staff or senior management access to the dashboard. You could choose to give them read-only access. So essentially, they could go in and see everything that we saw today, but none of their changes, if they decide to unintentionally make them, would take effect. Or you can really limit this down to provide just access to monitor only features, so they wouldn't have the configuration tab available to them at all. So yeah, there are a multitude of different ways you can arrange this and configure this, but yeah, that's completely possible. I don't know if you use that at all, Daniel?
Yes, we do actually. So for three of the team have got, you can set the organisation. You can also set access by tag as well. So you can also then set up the auditing stuff to send you emails when things are changed. So from a change management perspective, you can have You can create a, if you're in like an ITIL environment, you can have your change request put through, you can have the member of staff do the changes, and then you can have the copy of the changes that were made sent back to your ticket system, so you've got end-to-end view of everything. So it's it's very simple to set up and easy to use. So
Great. Question here, can you block specific sites and ports? Again, another question about the AP running a VPN service. Okay, a lot of questions in there. I'll try to address all of them. So firstly, yes, you can block specific sites. So earlier on when we were demonstrating, let me actually flip back, the firewall and traffic shaping features. So if I go to configuration, firewall and traffic shaping, leave this page. So there's a few different ways to apply layer 7 firewall rules. The way in which Oxford Fertility Unit have applied them here is to use the built-in categories that we have, everything from blogging, email, file sharing, through to VoIP and video conferencing, web file sharing, ports, for example, a remote IP range, etc. Or if you leave HTTP hostname open, you can just type in a URL. So say, for example, you want to just block Facebook, you could just come into here and type in facebook.com, and that's it. Facebook is blocked. So next time a user tries to access Facebook using their web browser, a timeout error just occurs. So yeah, great question. So we are just about running out of time now. Just wanted to thank everyone for attending and their time and attention today. I know you're all very busy people. A very special thank you to Daniel for time letting us know about your experiences with Cisco Meraki and how you have the Oxford Fertility Unit dashboard set up. I don't know if you have any final thoughts, Daniel, that you'd like to share before we wrap up.
No, I'm good, thank you.
Great, okay. Just before everyone leaves the door, there is a very short 2-question survey which just helps us with the quality and content of these webinars for future attendees. We'd be very appreciative if you took a couple of seconds to answer those. If we haven't had a chance to get to your question in person today, I do apologize for that, but they are getting logged, so you'll get a call from a Cisco Meraki representative after the webinar to answer any unanswered questions, or if you think of any questions from now until then. From myself, Jackie and Daniel, thank you very much for attending today. Hope you have a great remainder of the day. I hope to speak to you sometime soon in the future. Thanks very much for now. Bye-bye.